Hello, happy believers. Is anyone among you suffering? Let him pray. Is anyone cheerful? Let him sing praise. James chapter 5 verse 13. Reflection. There are highs and lows in everybody's life. And it says in James chapter 5:13, if anyone is suffering, pray. A time of sadness in people's lives can be a death of a loved one or anything that someone has to let go of. Sometimes it is a family pet or a place, etc. And grieving becomes a day-to-day reality. A reading which has come to mind is the Death of Lazarus, because Jesus wept 3 times and this was one time. If you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe and share. You can read the full account in John 11 verses 1 to 44. I'm starting with John 11 verses 1 to 7. Now, a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, this illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Reflection. It amuses me where it says that Jesus loved them, but when he heard the news that Lazarus had died, he stayed where he was for an extra 2 days. It sounds like a contradiction, but Jesus knew what the outcome of Lazarus' death would be, and knew that he would be glorified through it. John chapter 11 verses 11 to 15. After saying these things, he said to them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him. The disciples said to him, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover. Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought that he meant taking rest in sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus has died, and for your sake I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. Reflection. Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him. This was a very gentle way of saying Lazarus had died, but his disciples picked it up differently. So Jesus had to say, Lazarus has died, putting it more abruptly. And I suppose death can be seen as falling asleep, as we are awakened and enter into our eternal home. John chapter 11 verses 17 to 27. Now when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he dies, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world. Reflection. Martha knew Jesus very well. She knew what he was capable of doing. As she said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. But then there was confusion when Jesus said, Lazarus will rise again, because Martha did not comprehend what Jesus was capable of doing, to bring someone back to life who had been buried now for 4 days. It was beyond their imagination, the wildest dreams. John chapter 11, verses 28 to 37. When she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying in private, The teacher is here and is calling for you. And when she heard it, she rose quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Now when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. And he said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. So the Jews said, See how he loved him. But some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man also have kept this man from dying? Reflection. When Mary met Jesus, she said to Jesus the same as Martha, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. It was a very sad occasion. There was a lot of mourning and people were grief-stricken. They were also annoyed because if Jesus had come straight away, they knew Lazarus would not have died, as Jesus had the power to heal him, and they knew that. And in the midst of all that, Jesus was the only one who knew the purpose and outcome of Lazarus' death would be. And knowing everything, every angle of the circumstances, and knowing how everyone was affected, Jesus was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled, and he wept, he cried. Jesus didn't always find his mission easy. John chapter 11, verses 38 to 44. Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a grave, and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, Take away the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, by this time there will be an odour, for he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with linen strips, and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." Reflection. This was a very emotional time for Jesus, as when he arrived to the tomb, he was deeply moved again. They still had no idea of what was about to happen, as Jesus said to Martha, maybe a little frustrated, "Did I not tell you?" And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me." God was the only one who heard Jesus and understood what was going on and why. Jesus cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with linen stripes, and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." Here everyone was witnessing the glory of God in action. John chapter 11, 45 to 46. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what he did, believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Reflection. Again, here we see a reason for mixed emotions. People believed in Jesus. Praise, glory, cheerfulness, excitement, and thanksgiving. And some went to the Pharisees. Disappointment, sadness, jealousy, and anxiety. Two very different reactions. In the death of Lazarus, and then Jesus raises Lazarus, is a very human story of grief, misunderstandings, reactions, judgments, beliefs, and sometimes chaos. The only person who knew the whole story was Jesus, and he also cried. The only person who totally understands us is Jesus. Jesus has been through everything we have been through, so it makes sense that we turn to Jesus, talk to him, because he will understand us like no one else can. He's waiting. Where? In the Eucharist. Please like, subscribe and share so we can all live our wonderful Catholic faith together in all its richness. Next painting very, very soon. Watch this space. Until then, remember, when you're emotional, Jesus understands.